In celebration of the 90th Annual Academy Awards and the 20th anniversary of my own meager Oscars pick contest, Stella and I have ventured to watch every nominated film before this year's broadcast. Today, we're here to speak our minds on those who've been honored by the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences in a special 9-part series. Welcome, Stella.
As a clarification, we have not seen all the foreign films.
Not just the foreign films, but we'll get to that in a little bit. We've seen pretty much everything. But this first episode will be a short episode, or should I say, a shorts episode. We'll be talking about live action, animated, and documentary shorts, 3 categories often overlooked by the viewing public. We'll tell you everything that you need to know and who we'd like to win. But since making movies isn't just about competing for prizes, is that all it's about, right?
I don't know. It depends on who you ask.
And since you're likely listening to this after the broadcast and already know who won, our focus will be mainly on the work and the honor of being nominated.
Wonderful.
Yes. So first, let's talk about the live-action shorts. We actually saw all the shorts this year, which is pretty amazing.
Which is pretty awesome. I like the American flag shorts. I mean, I really think those looked great on you.
Yeah, those were pretty great. They were a little tight around the thighs.
Thorax.
You can actually, if you have Amazon Prime, you can go on Amazon Prime. You can actually buy all the live action and animated shorts. I think it's a low price of just $8.
Yeah, $8 actually for about 8 to 10 movies, something like that.
Yeah, it's 10 movies.
Is it?
There's 5 in each category.
Sorry.
And if you want to see documentary shorts, those are a little harder. You can watch many of those on YouTube. One of them is an HBO documentary.
You don't need to watch that one.
Well, we'll get to that later, won't we? Let's first talk about the live-action shorts. One of the first, DeKalb Elementary. DeKalb Elementary is actually inspired by an actual 911 call placed during a school shooting incident in Atlanta, Georgia. What did you think of DeKalb Elementary, Stella?
I really liked it. I think it slowly touched on things. I never know how to place it, because even after I watched it, I still wasn't sure about how my feelings on it, because even though I thought it was slow and it had a point in and it stated it really early in the short, it didn't make light of anybody's situation. It didn't make light of the shooter, of the people that were in the room, of kind of the officers, but only because they're off screen and they're just so late in the short that you don't know. They don't really play a part in this. So you're just seeing the people interact inside the elementary school. Right,
it's basically a play with 2 actors. Even the children are not really seen in the film. It's very tense, and the tension just builds and builds throughout. I wouldn't say it's slow. I'd say it's tense. It was realistic.
Yeah, but there was no deflation. It wasn't until the cops came in that it utterly deflated, and it deflated so quickly.
No spoilers. No spoilers. There are police in this film, but we're not going to get into the spoilers for these movies.
Either way, it still didn't have this. It didn't still have the same rate of decay as I would have appreciated.
I gotcha. I understand that. Okay. I actually want to get to the next one alphabetically last, because it's such a departure from the rest of the movies. So let's talk about My Nephew Emmett. The description for this film is at 2:30 a.m. on August 28th, 1955, in the most racially divided state in the country. 64-year-old Mose Wright tries to protect his 14-year-old nephew, Emmett Till, from the racist killers out for blood. It's based on the true story of the 1955 murder of Emmett Till. There really aren't any spoilers there. This is a well-known story. It's the first major story in the civil rights. It started before the civil rights movement really kicked in.
Most well covered.
Yeah, I mean, most people know about, Emmett Till was...
Well, I think most people who pay attention to history, or at least had an interest in it, because I've talked to a lot of people who I'm like, hey, do you know who Emmett Till is? And they're like, no.
Yeah, that's
and it's
true.
A lot of people closer to my age, so a lot of the younger generation, and that's not to say that my generation doesn't care about history. I think we really care about history, and it's definitely something that we watch out for, because, we try not to have another Hitler, even though it's a failure right now. So it's unfortunate, because about the South, and I think a lot of us like to turn a blind eye because we're already facing our own troubles today, which can be similar to what we faced back then. So we're trying to figure out our own struggles right now, and it's hard for us to be able to think thoroughly on things that had already happened, like Emmett Till, and really give it the credence that it needs.
Yeah, I think that they should show this short film in every school when they talk about civil rights and talk about Emmett Till, because mainly what we know about Emmett Till is actually the interview with Mose, right? If you've been shown that,
Well, I never saw it when I was growing up.
yeah, I mean, this is kind of they took that little that interview and they turned it. He was very brave to have told his story. But the other thing that we know about is the front page of the Chicago, every other newspaper in the country, where Emmett Till's mother had an open casket and wanted to publish the pictures of her son so that people could see how brutalized he was.
Right. I think covering that aspect of history, I think it was difficult for my history teachers at the very least to cover it, because I feel like it's been so well covered when we were younger, but at the same time, when we're younger, we don't get told everything, because not only are we children at that point, like if you're 8 to 12 years old, you don't need to know this brutalized history of the U.S., but it's about being honest versus about how much violence you want to expose to children. As much as I want honesty to children about saying, look, our history is all fucked up and we haven't gotten nearly the right ideas put into our textbooks to show the true and honest history of everybody, should we really tell people that it was this violent?
Yeah, but and there are people that get angry that their children are being taught these things.
I mean, that's how they create shooters, right? According to Trump, it's all the violent media.
Well, I think it's important to know what's out there, but there is a point where it dispels reality. I get that, but I think it's important for people to understand who Emmett Till was and what he stood
Definitely.
for. And L.B. Williams plays Mose Wright, and he is amazing.
Yes.
He's well known for bit parts in TV shows. He's been on, I think, Law and Order, stuff like that. He's got a lot of credits, but this is his first starring role, I believe, and he's fantastic.
Totally, he melts into the role.
Absolutely. The Silent Child, which is described as the Silent Child, centers around a profoundly deaf 4-year-old girl named Libby,
who's actually deaf.
Who's born into a middle-class family and lives in a world of silence until a caring social worker teacher teaches her the gift of communication. I think that a lot of these films this year, especially the shorts and stuff like that, have a message. This one tells a whole story and then at the end kind of tags the message into it, which is really, children that are deaf need to be taught in a different way, but they generally get thrown into basic education and don't get the education that they need.
Or even just more exposure to families that don't understand. I found myself getting really angry at some of the characters in this short because I don't understand how the importance that they put into their own personal lives outweighs this child's need.
Right, you kind of want your child to be normal.
Right,
kind of
which I understand, but how much do you want this so bad? How badly do you want this in order to it negatively affects a child?
Well, yeah, I think the point was one of the big points was that the child's not abnormal. They just need different things than
right.
your other children do.
It's not going to be as easy as when they were growing up or when someone else is growing up. It's the same things. The only difference is that it's going to be more visually oriented other than auditory.
Yeah. So that was a pretty brilliant short. And then Watu Wote, which is All
Watu
of
Wote?
Us. Watu Wote, maybe. Yeah. The song is very catchy, but I don't remember it now. Watu. Anyway, for a decade, Kenya has been targeted by terrorist attacks by the Al-Shabaab. An atmosphere of anxiety and mistrust between Muslims and Christians is growing until in December 2015, Muslim bus passengers showed that solidarity can prevail. That's the description given for that film. I think this was the biggest budget of the movies. It's interesting too because I believe it was German. I think it was a German film, but it's all shot there in Kenya, and they speak the local language. It's all local actors.
Well, Germany also doesn't have to fly as far as we would.
Well, they don't have to fly. Yes, yeah, they took a bus. No.
My point is that it is probably has the most budget as far as all the other shorts, but it wouldn't be as expensive as if people from LA were flying. That's my only point. but I think I think the story is also really under highlighted. I don't think people really knew about it up until like I had no idea about this short, and it's not something that surprises me in the sense of I would hope that I hope that there's camaraderie. Like that's a idealized world. Like I see this in an ideal world where you have people looking out for other people, no matter who you are, no matter how you've been. If it's about life or death, you try to help out your fellow human being, and we all kind of hope for that deep down inside, I think. And then to actually see it and for it to have been a real thing, it's just kind of awe-inspiring.
Yeah, I think this short, as well as all the other shorts, have very good acting, and that's the driving factor. The stories are very well contained, and they do a good job telling each story, but it hinges on these brilliant actors that are people that you've never seen before, which is fantastic. Let's go back to the 11 o'clock,
Ugh.
which is, what are you going ugh for? It's I took it out of alphabetically because it's such a departure. All the other ones are all about heavy things, school shootings, deafness, and teaching kids with special needs, and then like the Muslim Christian war in Kenya, and then you have the 11 o'clock. It stood out. It's about a delusional patient of a psychiatrist. He believes he's actually the psychiatrist, and as they each attempt to treat each other, the session gets out of control. I think this one was New Zealand. I don't remember where that short came from. It was one of those nasally countries, and I loved it. I thought it was great. It was hilarious. But when I was doing the list, I forgot what it was. I looked at all the other names and I remembered what they were, and then I had to look.
Wait, define the list
Of the nominated films.
Got it.
But I thought it was hilarious. It was well written and very well acted, and it was funny.
It's too long.
It was too long.
I get it. There's these two people that are going to be doing ridiculous things. Please tell me what's going on and end. It was not my cup of tea. I appreciated it for not being a heavy subject and allowing for at least one selection to not be so dramatic. But no, it was not my cup of tea.
I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic.
I feel like
can't figure out what country it was from.
I was
I
gonna
was saying it was
say.
Iraq, but it's not Iraq.
No,
Basara at 11
sure
o'clock.
it's not.
Hang on, I'm pulling it up. That's the wrong. Hang on, where'd it go? The 11 o'clock. Here, we're going to pull up this short because I want to know where it came from. Country of origin. Australia. So that was pretty close. Less nasally. But I thought it was great. I thought it was, and I thought it was well deserving of a nomination. It's just the most forgettable out of the shorts.
Yeah, there's no message. That's why it's forgettable.
I loved it, though. I thought it was fantastic. So those are the live-action shorts. Stella, what is your favorite of those?
Probably Watuwote or Watuwote, just because it is more of a heartwarming come-together story, and even as cheesy as it sounds, that's probably my favorite. The runner-up that really ties to it is My Nephew Emmett, because and the reason why is because it did make me so angry in a theater. Like, I legitimately wanted to jump into the screen and be like, what the fuck are you doing? And just punch the lights out of that guy. I was so angry.
Emmett?
No. Really? Yes. Emmett for whistling
racist.
at a woman that didn't actually happen.
Yeah, if you watch the newest Dave Chappelle special, he actually talks about it. That's how much in the...
Which is not spoilery, I guess, if you haven't seen that.
That's not a spoiler. He talks about Emmett Till.
Yeah.
Stand-up
That's if
special.
you've seen it.
Yeah, My Nephew Emmett is my favorite of those, but I actually like the 11 o'clock second best. It was just funny. I kind of called it early on watching it. But what's the Vegas favorite, Stella? What'll likely win?
I like your attempt at humble brag. Right now, the top favorite is going to be the DeKalb Elementary.
DeKalb Elementary.
Yeah, I can't say that.
Interesting.
And then followed up by The Silent Child, which the funny part is the most popular bets are for The Silent Child than DeKalb Elementary. But we'll see that. Silent Child is at a 64% out of all bets.
Wow, that's
even
pretty
though
high.
it's second runner-up.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about the animated short films. So the first one is an animated telling of Kobe Bryant's poem, Dear Basketball. So a lot of people probably don't know this, especially athletes, people of sports that don't like the Oscars. Kobe Bryant is actually nominated for an Academy Award this year because he produced, wrote, and acted in this short, Dear Basketball. It had sort of a charcoal animation style, and it was a lot of people have given it some criticism because it's kind of self-congratulatory. It's Kobe Bryant talking about himself as a basketball player, but it's the message is really supposed to be to go out and chase your dreams,
and that's what I got out of it. I remember when we went to go watch this in the theater. Somebody got up out of their seat after all the shorts had played, and they were just, what is that Love and Basketball one? It's so self-serving and so obnoxious, and I'm just like, bro, really? You're going to focus on the fact that it's Kobe Bryant about Kobe Bryant instead of the fact that he's telling you that you can do it, that there is no reason for you as a child to want to dream to do this, and if you work hard enough and you study and you do everything you need to do, you can do it.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite beautiful if you forget the fact that it's a person that you have seen on television. Because he talks about being a child and dreaming about basketball. It's his only love. He sacrificed his whole life for it. And then it's time to say goodbye to basketball.
Right, and that's him departing away from the thing that we all know him about and trying to re-identify himself.
Right, I thought it was a beautiful film and beautifully animated, and if you have a problem with it, then it's just forget that it's a real person, I guess.
Well, it's also not self-serving. It wasn't saying that he was the best. If you watch the film and you genuinely watch the film, not try to see it through the lens, it doesn't necessarily say that I was the best and I was number one and I did all these things. No, he didn't, because Michael Jordan was the best. So let's get that out of the way.
I don't know. Kobe might be better.
Kobe's good. I'm not saying he's not.
I'm not a sports fan. I don't know enough about it, but I do know that it was a beautiful short.
Yes.
Garden Party, which is in a deserted rich house, a couple of amphibians explore their surroundings and follow their primal instincts. This is from France. The animation is so detailed. It looks like it's a nature film. It's pretty amazing.
It got me for a second. When I first started watching it, I was taken aback by how beautifully crafted it was, and then you start to see parts of the animation slightly unravel, only in the sense that you see that it is animated. That it gives it away. It's almost too shiny, or it's almost too smooth.
And they do some goofy stuff that real frogs wouldn't do. It's kind of like a Looney Tunes cartoon, where it doesn't really tell a story. It's just got a bunch of tableaus, but they're not really funny all the time. There's a few that are funny.
Well, they have jokes, but they're not comedic frogs, I guess.
They're French, which is ironic, French frogs. But anyway,
wah, wah.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll come back. We'll circle back to that a little bit.
Garden Party is fun, though. I liked it. It gave me a loop-de-loop.
Lou, which is the only Pixar short. I actually thought there wasn't going to be a Pixar short this year because
he forgot Cars existed.
I forgot Cars 3 had a short in front of it. I was thinking of the Coco's terrible Frozen short. I was like, oh, they're not going to get nominated. Maybe somebody else has a shot. Lou is... It's just Pixar. It's a Pixar short about lost and found box and the unseen monster within. And it's a Pixar short.
Well, it's cute. Yeah, I mean, it follows the same Pixar tread story where you have this thing that you like, and then you're like rooting for it, and then it does something, and then you feel awe at the end. Like it
makes you feel something. It's supposed to,
Yeah.
And Pixar has definitely figured out how to tell a story and how to have a marketable
brand.
Main character. Something that. Although Lou's not really the main character in the story. But
no, but they make you feel, they give you a reason to like everybody.
Yeah, and they have characters that your kids are going to want to have on a T-shirt or in their toy box.
Or identify with, and it's not a negative thing.
Right. Negative Space, which is another French film. Even though Sam's father is hardly ever home because he is often away on business trips, he is able to connect with his son by teaching him how to pack a suitcase. This one, I don't want to give anything away about it, except that it is beautifully crafted, and it's, yeah.
I learned how to pack a suitcase.
Yeah, he. It's
like it. No, but it does. If you at least pay attention to that very bit, you do learn how to pack a suitcase really well and get everything you need into a little space. I'm gonna say that.
It almost seems like an instructional video at first, and then it brings you in with something that's very heartfelt, and then it concludes.
It teaches you how to pack a suitcase, and the animation is wonderful. I'll say that.
Yes, and then Revolting Rhymes.
Oh, I actually started watching that before I realized that it was nominated. Like, I want to say I started watching it the Friday before they did the announcements, and then fell asleep like halfway through or something, or I wanted to watch it with you or something.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's actually made by PBS. 2.5
No,
hour.
BBC.
Is it BBC? Oh, it had a PBS logo in it.
That's because PBS worked together here for US.
So it's 2.5 hour animated films, but only the first one was nominated. Let's be clear on that. On the much loved Rhymes, written by Raoul Dahl and illustrated by Quentin Blake. The second part is very good. I think the first part's better. Yeah, you should watch both of them. They're both on Netflix.
I liked the second half better. Maybe because I had to watch the first half of the first half twice.
Maybe.
But I like the second one better because I liked the rounding out of everything.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It finishes well.
It's basically kind of a Shrek from Raoul Dahl's point of view. It takes the old...
I don't know about that.
Well, it takes the old nursery rhymes that you're familiar with, and it makes them into something more comedic and modern.
It modernizes it for sure, and parts of it are funny, but I have a feeling that goes more of the story that was being told and the animation style. It wouldn't... I mean, if you animated it differently, it wouldn't have been as funny. The pigs were great, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't... Raoul Dahl wrote it before Shrek. I don't mean to say that he's just doing Shrek.
Anyway.
But it's, so those are our 5 animated short films. What was your favorite, Stella?
I don't know, like... If I had just watched Lou, like just at the theater, not before Cars, I would say that. Having watched it again and just, I don't know, it didn't grab me as well. I think it is because I had to watch it again. I just didn't feel the same feeling I did the first time. Rather than if I watch Dear Basketball again, I probably would be just as inspired.
You know, I'd like to see Kobe Bryant win an Oscar. That would be cool. But for me, Revolting Rhymes is the best. It's
I can see that.
It's rewatchable.
You could show
clever.
Older kids?
Yeah, I think it's good for all ages. I think Lou is the most commercially appealing, and
that's probably why I don't like it as much.
Well, it's well made, but and I love Negative Space. So I just really liked it a lot.
It was excellent. It's worth nomination. It was not.
Yeah,
it's on my bottom.
It's not gonna win. It's not on my bottom, but Garden Party is definitely my least favorite.
I liked Garden Party despite having watched it and then being grossed out at the end. Like, I liked Garden Party, but at the end of it, I felt like so discomforted by everything.
It seemed more like a demo than it did a movie. It didn't tell a story.
For the first part of it, I can see that.
It was like,
the second half
here's
of it,
our beautiful animation, and we're just gonna, I don't know, let's make some frogs do stuff.
Anyway.
what's the Vegas?
Surprisingly, Dear Basketball.
Dear Basketball, interesting.
That
So
one's
Kobe
supposed
Bryant could win an Academy Award. I just like to see him get up and...
For betting, it's actually Garden Party that is pulling out most of the bets.
Garden Party, really?
But only by 14%, followed by Dear Basketball.
It might be because you'd win the most by betting on that one.
Right, probably. But either way, it's still Dear Basketball and then Lou as the runner-up, which will be a fun upset.
So we have documentary shorts next. Most of these, like we said, you can watch on YouTube. Heroin is on Netflix, and Traffic Stop is on HBO. I know we have a lot of thoughts about that one. Edith and Eddie, though. Edith and Eddie, ages 96 and 95, are America's oldest interracial newlyweds. Their love story is disrupted by a family feud that threatens to tear the couple apart. When you read that... The synopsis there, it kind of seems like it's going to be mainly about the interracial relationship, but it's really more about their ages. It kind of barely touches on the interracial aspect of it at all. I mean, there's an aspect where they kind of wonder if some of what they're suffering through is based on
Race.
But
I do think it's miscategorized by focusing because of their race, and maybe only because they are old. They're 95 and 96 respectively.
Well, I think that was what drew the filmmakers to make the movie. That it's
well, but you have to think 95, 96. They grew up in a segregated world.
Yeah, but they never talk about their own feelings about race at all.
Which is fine. Obviously, there's nothing. They don't have a problem with it.
Well, not at this age. But it would have been interesting to talk about have they evolved.
But that's not what the short is about, and
it's barely about
so
their
much more
lives
tragic
before, and so much about their ages.
It's so tragic. Like I cried. I'm not even gonna lie about it. And it's one of the shorts. No, I didn't. I cried. I didn't sob. But it's definitely one of the shorts that I would recommend to a bunch of people, especially people in long-term relationships. And I always have to preface it as, if you want to be sad and watch something really great, watch this documentary.
Heaven is a traffic jam on the 405. Mindy Alper is a tortured and brilliant 56-year-old artist who is represented by one of Los Angeles' top galleries. Acute anxiety, mental disorder, and devastating depression have caused her to be committed to mental institutions, undergo electroshock therapy, and survive a 10-year period without the ability to speak. Her hyper self-awareness has allowed her to produce a lifelong body of work that expresses her emotional state with powerful psychological precision. Through interviews, reenactments, the building of an 8.5-tall papier-mâché bust of her beloved psychiatrist, and examining drawings made from the time she was a child, we learn how she has emerged from darkness and isolation to a life that includes love, trust, and support.
She's a wonderful artist.
She's a really interesting character. The way that she speaks today is very unique.
Staccato.
Well, it's just unique. She pronounces certain words in a way that only she does, and it's interesting because it would be, if you met her out in public, she listens to the Walkman when she goes to the grocery store because the sounds are too much for her, and she has an appearance that gives you the idea that she might be like a crazy cat lady.
Kinda. I think she wants to look the way she wants to look, but I also think it's because of the medication she has to take.
Yeah, she doesn't do a lot of self-care.
She comments on it.
Is kind of the thing, I guess. And really, you would take her for granted, I think is the point. You would walk right past her, especially if you saw her in traffic. And then you see the artwork that she's created, and it's amazing.
I think all her beauty is so internal, and that she can have it flow out of her through her artwork is amazing, because when you do look at her artwork, it really comes through.
Well, she's a woman that was not shown a lot of love. I mean, that's kind of the theme over and over again in the film. And yet, really, what they say in the synopsis is true. She pours so much love into her artwork, and then it gets her attention back, which is something that I don't think she expects to get from it. She's just she's doing what she's always done.
Oh, no, yeah. And I think she does touch on a lot of things, because does it talk about the art exhibit?
Yeah, there's an art exhibit in
So you have the build up. That's kind of the timeline we're watching on it, and timeline.
She's terrified of her art being seen.
Of course, most artists are like that too at first, I believe. So I think for her too, it became doubly hard.
I think the art from when she was a child is really interesting too. And so yeah, check that one out. It's on YouTube. Heroine. This one's on Netflix. 3 women fight to break the cycle. One life at a time. There we go. Yeah, 3 women fight to break the cycle, one life at a time. This was actually filmed in Huntington, West Virginia, a town with opioid overdose rates 10 times the national average.
It's the overdose capital of the U.S.
Yes, and it does. It follows 3 women. One's a judge. One is a
police
chief, and then the other
or
one. What was the other woman in that one?
Paramedic? No.
I think she was a social worker. Anyway, it follows 3 women.
This is really bad.
That are tackling this huge epidemic in the place where it's the worst. And I remember Stella looking at me and going, "This is what the world would be like if women ruled it." So yeah, check that one out. It's on Netflix, or not on Netflix. Yeah, Netflix. It's on Netflix. Let's see, Knife Skills.
I really liked this one, and I think I like it because of the idea that sets up for the short.
Knife skills?
Yes, because I would want something like this happening everywhere, not just this one place.
Well, okay, here we go. This is another one with a long description. What does it take to build a world-class French restaurant? What if the staff is almost entirely men and women just out of prison? What if most have never cooked or served before and have barely 2 months to learn their trade? We follow the hectic launch of Edwin's Restaurant in Cleveland, Ohio. In this improbable situation, with its mouth-watering dishes and its arcane French vocabulary, we discover the challenges of men and women finding their way after their release. We come to know these trainees intimately, as well as the restaurant's founder, who is himself haunted by his time in jail. These men and women all have something to prove, and all struggle to launch new lives, an endeavor as pressured and perilous as the ambitious restaurant launch of which they are a part.
Arcane French vocabulary. That's really funny.
Yeah, I like this one. It was kind of like this is the kind of thing you would show if you were trying to raise money for this cause. It didn't. I thought it told a pretty interesting story. You got to know the people pretty well, but I have problems with the name. Knife skills, which is life skills, but it also kind of they're prisoners. They might cut you, and that's.
Well, and then that's also biting into the stereotype that it's trying to dispel, isn't it? That these people who are going into this institution to be rehabilitated, and they're trying to come back out and be productive workers of society, that's the whole purpose, right? Well, the problem is that we don't actually have an institution that does rehabilitate, let alone the fact that we don't actually hire them outside of
the cause is
the
noble,
institution.
and it shows. I think it does a pretty good job of showing the perils and
difficulties of re-emerging into
it doesn't
society.
It doesn't paint a perfect picture of how easy it would be just if you just hire these people out of prison, then you won't have any problems.
And they'll work really hard and they'll do everything.
Right.
No, it does give you statistics in the film as well. It tells you at the beginning of what's happening, and then towards the end of it, it tells you more statistics, which were, I think, really informative. If you want to watch that and then back-to-back it with 13th, I think you'd have a really strong hatred.
Yeah, that was last year.
A really strong hatred of our justice system.
13th, I think, last year. I think it was nominated. I don't remember if it won last year.
I think it did.
It might have. But yeah, that's another one that's available on YouTube. And then, let's see, Traffic Stop. Here we go. This one's on HBO. Traffic Stop tells the story of Brejon King, a 26-year-old African-American school teacher from Austin, Texas, who was stopped for a routine traffic violation that escalated into a dramatic arrest. Caught on police dash cam, King was pulled from her car by the arresting officer, repeatedly thrown to the ground and handcuffed. En route to jail in a squad car, she engaged in a revealing conversation with her escorting officer about race and law enforcement in America. The documentary juxtaposes dashcam footage with scenes from King's everyday life, offering a fuller portrait of the woman caught up in this unsettling encounter. So I watch a lot of Traffic Stop videos on YouTube. I'd actually seen these videos before on YouTube.
The two that they display on the short. There are two different ones.
Yes, the one when she's in the back of the police car and has that conversation, that is really like revealing and interesting. I think they should have focused much more on that.
Nah, that's not as dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is when you watch a video with police brutality, you generally know, oh, that's excessive force. And in this situation,
we expect that now, yeah.
In this situation, I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I was watching a video that was like, oh, this is excessive force.
Yes and no. I don't think it intended to be that way, and it certainly didn't start that way. But I do think that it eventually got into a point where he had to make a reason for some of the things that had happened. And
he does say that she took a swing at him, and
which
I
didn't
see that in the video. But we do see her fighting and being
resisting.
Yeah, and when we say resisting, because bear in mind, when we talk about a traffic stop in this situation with the racial issues, there are so many great examples of very bad police work.
Cops that shouldn't have made it and did.
Yeah, for example, I think we could have focused on, and he got 20 years, the cop that planted the taser on the man that he shot 7 times in the back, or the little boy in Cleveland, Ohio, that was shot within 20 seconds of the police coming up. There are even the guy with the Lucy cigarette in New York City that got choked out,
or the special ed teacher that sat all the way down and still got shot. Yeah,
there are plenty of examples of. And I think this is
abuse.
Part of what's interesting, and they could have made an interesting film because it's not black and white here, to pardon the pun. In this situation, she is fighting with him from the moment that he pulls over, and...
Well, I think part of it comes from fear, and I understand the fear. I do understand the fear because it's your heart's pounding, something's already happening. Like, anybody's heart is already going to kind of escalate when you see the cops' lights turn on after you. So she's already going to be nervous about the situation. She knows she's black. I mean, how do you not know that about yourself?
Sure.
And that makes it twice as escalated. All right, so now I'm really nervous about what's going to happen. Is this going to be good? Is this going to be bad? Oh no, it's a white guy. What's going to happen to me? And then having to cover for yourself. Knowing that you did something wrong and then covering for yourself. I get it. You don't want to get in trouble. But after the initial talks, and when it did become physical, I think that was where my problem started happening, because she's a dancer. You see it. She talks about it in the film, and you see her dancing.
She can make her body do what she wants to.
Right.
She can control her emotions the way she wants.
Right. And then obviously she didn't have that, or she intentionally allowed herself to escalate to such a point that she was making this so much more than it needed to be. This all started with, can you put your feet in the car?
Yeah,
and that's it. And that's what else is he gonna do?
It escalated. I said it when we were watching it, and we didn't know what our opinions were going to be at that time. But I said, I've done a couple of those things when I've gotten pulled over, but I've never done all those things. Where you kind of argue with the cop a little bit, where you're like, hey, I was just pulling into the spot.
I just stopped. Yeah,
you didn't pull me over. That kind of thing. But it's just one thing after another. It's pretty relentless, and it's not to defend the officer, but I don't know what else he could have done.
Well, his patience, I do feel
he
like...
He could have tased her, he could have hit her, he didn't do any of those things.
He says
it's not a black... Well, he could have, and it's not a black and white police brutality situation, because those are the things I've seen,
Well, yeah, it definitely could escalate in his favor, and she could have gotten severely hurt. That being said, I will say this, that I do feel like his patience ran out just a minute too soon. Literally just a minute too soon. And if
police officers need to learn more customer service.
Sure.
They can learn a lot from retail workers.
It's also highly stressful. I'm sure he's just as aware that this is a white cop with a black woman just as much as she is.
Absolutely.
So, if you're aware of this and you know that you need to have the patience for it, even as obstinate as she's being, everybody's going to be obstinate. It doesn't matter your color.
Right. I just think she wasn't the right subject matter. I think it was good that we wanted a short about this subject.
Right. The subject isn't necessarily the problem. I just have the problem with either the intentional negligence of your situation, or the fact that you're trying to use the situation to your advantage so that you can look like a victim.
Right. The guy that died live on Facebook would have been a much better viral video to go after, because he told the officer, I have a gun.
But that's new. We know about it.
Well,
now.
I guess maybe we'll have that next year. But that was such a, and it would be interesting to hear what the officer says, because he seemed to have realized pretty instantaneously that he made a mistake, because he's screaming his head off, and that would be a much better.
I think it doesn't.
Subject.
It also doesn't start a conversation. I think it stops a conversation from happening. Most of these situations, I would love to have it be an open conversation, have an open ability to talk about, this side did something wrong, this side did something wrong, what can we do to fix this so it doesn't happen? Whereas traffic stop kind of just makes it look like it was the cops. Yeah.
Too much. She talks a lot about self-love and how important that is to her, and by the end of it, I really felt like I was watching a movie about a narcissist. And that's not what you should get out of a movie that's about something that's serious. She's just the wrong subject for that. So, anyways,
it's nothing against her. She
clearly,
seems like a nice person.
I'm sure she'd be a great teacher, but you don't have to use yourself in the math example. Miss King is having to figure out this problem. What should Miss King do?
You think of different names every day, David. You think of 1,000 different names.
It's just you talk about yourself in the third person. You kind of sound like Donald Trump.
Okay, David, you keep right on.
So those are the documentaries. What's your favorite, Stella, out of those?
I probably Eddie and Edith because it is so heartbreaking, but I really would have to also say Heroin is like the super close second.
Yeah, Heroin's my favorite. And I think in a year of this is really the year for women.
Hashtag me too.
Hashtag time's up. Heroin is a perfect film to win in this category. What do the Vegas odds say?
Eddie and Edith with
Edith and Eddie. Why do you keep saying it
I don't
backwards?
know. Evidently it's not time's up. It is still.
Yeah, it's still Eddie.
Edith and Eddie, and then Heroin is supposed to be right afterwards. But Heaven is a Traffic Jam is actually taking most of the cake right now at 37.5, followed by Heroin, and then Edith and Eddie.
Well, it's an excellent film. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the design aspects of film. So please tune in to the next episode.